Greetings, programmers, busted thumbs. I'm back again for episode number 5 on our beginner's tutorial for Scratch. We did so much in the last one that I feel like we need just a quick recap on what we were doing. I'll bring the program up, and if you recall, we added user interaction to our program. So when we go ahead and click the green flag to get started, we have 2 bits of user interaction. We can either click on our sprite, who now tells us what his name is, or we can click somewhere on the stage in the backdrop here, and then he'll start moving towards that place and calling that a lap, changing our laps by 1 again. And a lot went into the work we did there. We learned about these conditional statements down here, which checked if something was true or not to determine what we needed to do. We used operators. We used operators which are Boolean, and Boolean means they're either true or false. And we used other operators which worked on text, such as these here. And I just noticed we needed a space after this me here to make sure that we don't put me and the nickname together exactly, but have a space there. And we worked with some of our variables to track all of this. Not only that, we also learned about events. The events that are the user events look like this, and the ones that are our own events look like broadcast messages. We would broadcast from this stage here and then got that reacted to that broadcast in this when I receive message. That's quite a lot that we learned. The one thing I was noticing as my cat was running back and forth though is he was really gliding. He didn't look like he was walking at all. And that's what I'd like to take care of today. Let's make him look like he's walking a little bit more. If you remember way back when to the first tutorial, we talked a little bit about backdrops on stages and costumes on sprites. And our sprite cat here, has 2 costumes on him. He's kind of got a standing costume and a walking costume. And if I kind of flip back and forth just as quick as I can, it's kind of like a flip book. You remember if you ever drew in a little notebook in the corner of a notepad or something like that, and you can make the images change just a little bit, and then when you flipped it with your thumb, it actually looked like it was moving around, even though it was just a bunch of still pictures. Well, that's what we've got with this particular this particular set of costumes on this cat. If we were to make those things kind of flip between each other somewhat quickly, then it might look a little bit like he's walking in place or walking to a particular place. So let's see how we would do that. And for now, what we're going to do, I'm going to move some of this stuff over so we have a little bit more room. I'm going to put this guy up over here. And let's say that when the sprite is clicked, instead of saying his name, let's have him actually kind of walk a little bit. To do that, we're going to have to repeat. And I'm going to use a brand new repeat condition here. I'm going to say repeat until. And you notice that repeat until has one of these kind of 6-sided things. So it's looking for a Boolean. It's looking for a true or false. And what that means is it's going to go ahead and do the things that are inside of its little C here, until something becomes true. And I want to introduce something to you called the timer. Timer is over in sensing, these light blue guys, and is a variable that we can see down here. And if you look at him right now, he's running. And that's the number of seconds that have gone by since we started that program. Here, I'll make it a little bigger so you can see that. And it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, we can use this little block right here to reset that timer back to 0. And if we want something to run for a particular amount of time, I can use these conditionals, which says repeat until the timer becomes bigger than something. So the timer itself is a variable, and it's in seconds. So if I say repeat until the timer is bigger than, say, 5, that means that this thing's going to keep happening for 5 seconds. And then once 5 seconds is up, it's going to stop happening. And what I want to do to kind of make my flip book-like looking thing is to change the costume of my sprite back and forth, back and forth. And that's under looks. So all we have to do is 2 things. We want to switch the costume to walking, and then we want to switch the costume to standing. Well, actually, you probably should start at standing and then go to walking. No, He should go to, he'll be standing when he starts. He should switch to walking, then go back to standing. Got it. Now that's a little too quick. We won't even see the costume changes. So we actually have to introduce a little bit of a delay in here. And we can do that with the wait block, which I talked about before. Let's go ahead and wait in between. But we don't have to wait for a whole second. We can make it quite small. We can make it like 1/10 of a second, and that's 0.1. So now when we click on our little guy, he should reset the timer, and for 5 seconds he should start switching back between walking and standing. Let's see how that looks. Click start. You see that? Now it's not a very complicated animation. There's only 2 states that he can be in. So it's not the most clever thing in the world, but it works very well for teaching here. Teaching us how to do this and switch back and forth. You saw how he was kind of, let's do this again. You know, it kind of looked like he was moving along, although in this case he's not actually moving. He's staying in place, so he's kind of walking in place. I think that's a great start here. So we want this to happen. We want him to be walking as he's doing his laps. We want his costumes to be switching. And here's where it gets a little bit complicated. So I'm going to take this, that's kind of the core of what we want to do, which is switching the costumes. And I'm going to pull that out because we're going to use that again. And this time we're not going to use the timer anymore. I just wanted to show you what the timer was and show you what a repeat until is, because they can be handy in a lot of cases. But what we want him to do is to be doing that animation while he's doing run a lap. Now we have a little bit of a problem here in that I want those 2 things to be happening at the same time. And I told you that the way Scratch works is it does the first thing, then the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. Well, if we got down here to glide, I can't do things while it's gliding because it's actually waiting for the glide to finish. So we can't just put these things like right in here underneath glide, because it will wait till it moves and then it will start switching costumes, then it will move again, and we want those 2 things to happen at the same time. So in programming world we call this parallel programming. We want 2 things to happen in parallel at the same time. And the way we can do that is actually by using broadcasts again. So I want to keep track of when I need to be animating the little feet and when I don't. So I'm going to need a variable that actually tracks this. I'm going to make a variable on my sprite that it is walking, I'll call it. And now that we've created him, we can kind of hide him. Oops, wrong one. He is walking. We still want number of laps to show up. So which means we need to initialize him. So when he starts, is walking should be false. Remember, we're talking about false and true with a lot of these things. And in order for me to run 2 pieces of code at once, I have to go back to broadcast again. So I'm going to, right before I start walking, I'm going to broadcast an event. And that event is going to be start walking. Start walking animation, we'll call it. Start walking animation. Now you may have noticed that there are 2 broadcast events over here. One is broadcast and one is broadcast and wait. Broadcast and wait would make it work just as if it were every other block inside of this script. It would broadcast out to everyone, have them do what they were supposed to do, and then wait till they're all done and then go to the next items. When we do just broadcast, it is only concerned about sending out the broadcast message itself. It doesn't wait for anybody to get done. So that means that we could be running these things beneath it at the same time as we're handling the start walking animation. And that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to put one of these guys out and do the start walking animation. The very first thing I need to do when we start the walking animation is set the is walking to true, because that's what we're doing. I'm going to set is walking to true. And then I'm going to repeat until, just like we did before, but not use the timer. I'm going to repeat until is walking becomes false again. And I can simply pop, just like we did before, I can pop those guys inside. And so this guy's going to say set is walking to true. And until is walking is no longer true, it's false again, we're going to do that animation with the weights inside of it. The only thing we need to make this work is to make sure that is walking does become false at some point. And that needs to happen when we're all done doing this walking. We can put that back over here and say false. So what he's going to do is he's going to say, figure out where I need to go. That's these two sets. The broadcast tells the other guy that which needs to run in parallel or at the same time that he needs to start moving his legs. So he'll start moving his legs, and this guy will just keep doing that, moving his legs, while this guy points in the right direction, glides over for a second, points back again, glides back again, and changes the number of laps. At that point it says is walking to false. That message is going to go back here and trigger this condition, and this guy will stop. Okay? I hope that made sense. These two things, this bit right here and this bit underneath the broadcast, are going to be happening at the exact same time, and that can be a little confusing the first time, but we'll see it in action in just a second here. I'm going to make the screen bigger. Click play, and when I click, you see that? He's moving just like he did before. The laps are changing just like he did before, but now his feet, they're moving while he's moving to the point that I click on the screen. And that is parallel programming, at least in its simplest form. That's pretty cool. And that's a very good trick and technique to use for a lot of the things that we want to do in lots of our programs. All right. So we've learned about animation here in terms of switching the costumes, and you can add as many costumes as you like. We've learned about conditional repeats down here. We've learned about running things in parallel and finding the condition to make them start and stop. It's good to keep in mind that the stage will be getting the same event. It will get the start walking animation. We just didn't handle that, and if we had other sprites, we did just not handle that, and that's fine. Even though they all get those broadcasts, only the ones that really need to worry about it and write code about it, and the others will just let it go. All right, so this has been pretty fun again. I think this is another great opportunity for you to go into your particular programs that you've been working with alongside me as we've been going through these tutorials, and to give this a try. Try and get two things to run at the same time. Try and get them so that they stop at the time that you expect them to stop. Maybe do something interesting at the same time. Have him rotate around while he's walking or something like that. It's a good exercise to learn how to do broadcasts both within your sprite and across sprites, and to use a lot of the tools which Scratch has made available for us. In the next one, the next tutorial that we're going to do, we're going to talk a little bit about cloning. And that doesn't have to do anything with cloning sheep or anything like that. We're going to talk about cloning our sprites. So we have more than one copy of them, and they use the same code but are able to accomplish different things together. And that's a great topic as well, and one that you can use over and over again as well. So I hope this was a very interesting bit where we can learn a little bit more about the artistic side, the kind of the fun interaction side of working with Scratch, and it's something that you can use in your programs. We're getting a long ways along now to where you can write your own programs. I hold out for one more to learn a little bit more about cloning before you really unleash yourself on your own programs. But if you stick through at least one more, and then there will be more beyond that, I think you'll have your tool set built up to where you can make some very, very interesting programs and games on your own. All right, I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll be back for number 6, and I will see you then. Bye-bye.